Let me start by talking about same-sex marriage a little bit in the sense that from my view of the world as the chief law enforcement officer and chief lawyer of the state of Maryland, and as obviously a heterosexual, we look at this issue nationally. 10 years ago, people would have said, there's no way they're going to let same-sex couples get married in this country. 10 years from now, it'll be a quaint debate looking back and saying, remember a time when they didn't let same-sex couples get married? And I think what this report will do is advance that. It really will. Today we have 6 states that allow same-sex marriage, including, and in addition, the District of Columbia. But we still have, unfortunately, too many states, 39 I believe, that don't allow same-sex marriage by statute or by constitution. Maryland is one of those states that was very strange in that area because we have a statute which I believe to be unconstitutional in terms of equal protection and due process, which says that marriage is between a man and a woman. That will change the next time it goes to the Court of Appeals. However, we were one of the 6 states that was silent as to what are we going to do in terms of recognizing out-of-state same-sex marriages. And I was given the opportunity to write an opinion, a 45-page opinion that's available on our website, to say that when same-sex couples from other states that are legally married come to Maryland, that we will recognize those marriages. We did it on the public policy issue of same-sex couples, obviously as part of that debate, and one of the things that we mentioned were that same-sex couples were allowed to adopt children. And that, I think, was an important factor in the analysis that we had. But on a constitutional level, the bigger issue there was full faith and credit. This comes up and is relevant to the report today because it's the same issue happens in states that allow same-sex couples to adopt children. They then come to Maryland, and what are we going to do? Are we going to recognize that relationship and that adoption? And the answer, of course, is yes. Though I haven't been asked to write a formal opinion on that, the same legal analysis that came forward in the same-sex couple relationship would certainly hold. So what the report does is, I believe, changes the focus onto the children. But the answer, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to deal with these 2 million children on a national level in terms of their rights and how to get them the ability to have the same rights as children of heterosexual couples? Now, there's one thing that this report won't address and doesn't address. I mean, it talks about it, but it doesn't fix, which is the myopic, biased, prejudiced view that some people have, and unfortunately many people have, regarding LGBT people in general. And when we talk about the issue of same-sex marriage, when we talk about couples or gay people or same-sex couples being allowed to adopt children, so often and so quickly the debate from the narrow-minded begins to focus on gay people themselves and how that's a bad thing and how that's somehow defies the Bible and all these other issues. But what we need to do is remember, in this case, we're not going to change everybody's minds, while I would argue that it's changing very fast, faster than any other social issue that I've ever seen or heard about in this country. And that is, in large measure, to the LGBT community, I would submit. When I'm 40, I'll be 49 Sunday, so I'm 48. And when I was in high school, nobody was gay, it turned out. I mean, nobody said, hey, guess what, I'm gay. Today, in the same school that I went to, they have gay clubs. They 8th graders had a meeting. There's a meeting for worship. I went to a Quaker school, and they came out, and people self-identified as being gay in 8th grade. And so the world has changed, and that, I would submit, is in large measure to the community. Everybody now, gay or not, knows somebody in their family who's gay, knows their neighbor who's gay, someone they work with who's gay, and it turns out they're not malicious people, they're not pedophiles, they're not these terrible things, they're just like everybody else. And that's allowing the idea of families to go forward faster and faster among the entire population. So the issue then is, what are we going to do? How are we going to get, taking away the notion that we're not going to be able to change bias tomorrow, but we will over time, how are we going to give all legal rights to these children and to gay couples? And I would submit the first step is same-sex marriage. Because that is what as a public policy matter, what we're trying to do is enhance the family unit. We talk about it all the time. We give tax relief to people that are families. We look, many of our laws are designed around the notion of positive families being a positive thing and a good thing for our society. Well, that's what we're talking about here. So once we give same-sex recognition to marriage, then I think we've advanced the ball a long, long way. So where are we going to go with that? Well, there's a couple things that can happen. In Maryland, we were very short. We were very close, but just a little bit short on getting same-sex marriage last year in our General Assembly. This year, we'll pass same-sex marriage. It may be not a good thing, or it may be a good thing. Obviously, it's something we desperately need and want because it violates due process, it violates equal protection, and everybody in this country should have the ability to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. That is a tenet of this country's Bill of Rights. That said, we have an election next year, in 2012. And in Maryland, we're unique in the sense that we have a very heavy African-American population, 29.5%. We have a very heavy Catholic population, 25%. The state was founded by Catholics. And of course, we have Republicans who, by the way, are universally, all elected officials are against this. This same-sex marriage, there is no more Republican issue out there. This is two people contracting to do what they want, leave the government out of their private lives. That's a Republican issue, but every legislator, Republican legislator in Maryland votes against same-sex marriage each and every year, with the exception of one person. So the reason why I mentioned the Catholic and the African-American Republican coalition is there are many, many African-Americans who believe in same-sex marriage. There are many in this room. There are many Catholics that believe in same-sex marriage. There are many in this room. But some of the leadership is actually vehemently and openly and audibly against it. And with Barack Obama being on the ballot next year in Maryland, and with the DREAM Act being on the ballot again next year in Maryland, we're going to have a very hard fight on a referendum to uphold the law that the General Assembly passes. It's a fight worth fighting for, and the latest polls that have been conducted in Maryland show that more people are for same-sex marriage than against it. So hopefully they'll come out and vote, and we can get that, and it'll be resolved. If it's not, however, the issue will ultimately go to the courts. And as I mentioned, our Court of Appeals, which in a few years back looked at the issue and upheld our laws being constitutional, since then 3 judges have changed of the 7 on the Maryland Court of Appeals, and I would anticipate that that would be reversed based on the legal underpinnings of our opinion and what is said in there. Also, this will be eventually, under DOMA, that'll be found to be unconstitutional as well on the federal level. Now, the Supreme Court that's currently sitting there is a very active Supreme Court. They've had a couple of decisions that would defy legal reasoning, and so it's a result-oriented Supreme Court. But you don't know which way they'd lean on this issue, again, an issue of personal rights, and would seemingly be a very Republican issue. So that's where we're going. I just want to applaud the bringing the children in, because as I was writing that opinion I mentioned earlier about recognizing out-of-state same-sex marriages, I got a number of calls, shockingly, from people who were against it. And the arguments you've all heard are somewhat ridiculous. You know, so you're saying I should be able to marry my dog? No, we're not talking about your dog today. So what about polygamy? No, there's no movement for that. You know, and all these different things. What about the Bible? You know, the Bible. They always trot out the Bible, and of course I have to say I'm not a Bible scholar, but I don't think they talked about same-sex marriage in the Bible. But they did mention a lot about dignity of human beings and tolerance and treating all people equally, and let God be the judge of your actions. So. And then, of course, the other argument is, and this goes right to the point of this report, is what, you know, isn't marriage about procreation and the creation of families? Yeah, it's about the creation of families, and that's what we're talking about. Is it about procreation? Of course not. It's one of the aspects that is part of it. However, we do allow people on death row to get married. We don't dissolve infertile couples from their marriage. We allow a lesbian woman to marry a gay man. And we allow people over 70 to get married. So really it's not the sole purpose of marriage. But there are many, many children out there that need to be in loving homes. And this report accentuates that and talks about that, and it's a critical and important report, I think, in changing the nature of the debate.